Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The Biden administration is keeping up its push for a Palestinian state, and it's facing widespread opposition in Israel from both the government and the Israeli people.
And President Biden, he also issued an executive order against individual Israelis over violence in the West Bank. This action comes just as Israel has won a major victory over Hamas. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says the IDF reached a major military milestone, the defeat of Hamas in Khan Yunis. Now he says the IDF is moving on to their next targets.
The Khan Yunis brigade boasted that it would stand strong against the IDF. Today it is dismantled. And I'm telling you that we are completing the mission in Khan Yunis. And we will also reach Rafah, and we will eliminate anyone who's there, who is a terrorist, who is trying to attack us.
On the diplomatic front, the State Department kept up its push for a Palestinian state and implement a two-state solution. Thomas Friedman of the New York Times reported on what he says is part of President Biden's doctrine for an unprecedented diplomatic initiative to promote a Palestinian state now. UK Foreign Minister David Cameron said Thursday his country could recognize a Palestinian state.
That's long been our position. And of course, as part of that, Britain, along with other countries, would recognize Palestine as a country and recognize Palestine at the United Nations.
Britain's top diplomat said the UK's recognition could come after a ceasefire in Gaza, without waiting for talks to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The push for a Palestinian state comes while Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejects it, along with the rest of the government and the majority of the Israeli people who oppose it, as their sons and daughters are fighting the same people who would make up that state. On Thursday, in an unprecedented move, President Biden issued an executive order that targets Israelis in the West Bank who have been accused of attacking Palestinians in biblical Judea and Samaria.
That we will also take action on behalf of the United States, both against those who engage in settler violence and extremist settler violence that have been prosecuted by governments, and others who have not.
Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu issued a statement that says, in part, the vast majority of residents of Judea and Samaria are law-abiding citizens, many of whom are fighting right now in active and reserve duty to protect Israel. Israel acts against all violators of the law in all places, and therefore there was no place for drastic steps on this matter. The move came as Democratic voters are deeply split over Biden's conduct of the war, and he's losing support among Arab Americans, especially in Michigan, where he campaigned Thursday. Meanwhile, U.S. negotiators are pushing for a ceasefire that could release more hostages.
It's terrible, okay, because in the last time we did a ceasefire, we lost a lot of soldiers after that.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, I think this kind of plan has been tried before, and I've said it, I'll say it again. Back in 2004, during the Bush years, let's create an independent Palestinian state. Let's use Gaza as an example. Israel, withdraw all your troops, withdraw all Jews from Gaza. All of that happened. Israel said, okay, we'll do this, and we'll look forward to having a peaceful neighbor. And then, to the amazement of the State Department and the Bush administration, in 2006, with free and open elections, they elected Hamas. They elected a terror group. And the population said, we want to be ruled by terrorists who will vow to wipe Israel off the map. That ideology hasn't changed. And in the wake of October 7th, all the Palestinians in the West Bank are saying, we are Hamas. They actually look up to Hamas and say, we want to do the same thing. So to have some kind of two-state solution in the face of the reality on the ground, when are you going to wake up and actually listen to what they are saying? They are saying quite specifically, and have for 75 years, we want to wipe Israel off the map. And how can you ever have peace with that kind of ideology? The sanctions against Israeli citizens who have perpetrated violence, there are 4 people who have been targeted by this Biden order. I view it as, frankly, a political stunt because it's an election year. My question to the State Department, my question to the administration, what sanctions have you imposed on the terrorists coming out of Palestinian territory and killing innocent civilians in Israel? Are you applying this standard even-handedly? Are you denying them visas? Are you denying them access to banking and trade and all of these other things that you're trying to impose on these 4 individuals? It's clear who they are. They've been identified. You know them. Why aren't you applying this thing equally? Well, anti-Semitic incidents on college campuses jumped dramatically here in the U.S. after the Hamas massacre on October 7th. Now students from big-name schools are fighting back. Many have traveled to Israel to learn how to fight hatred against Jews. And Julie Stahl has that story.
Right now, if you're a student in support of Israel on a U.S. campus, you're in the minority, and you may even be in for a fight. Knesset member and former UN Ambassador Danny Danon met with the students at the Knesset and encouraged them to develop strategies on how to fight anti-Semitic propaganda on campus.
We are fighting the same fight. We are fighting evil. Today it's very hard to be supporter of Israel on U.S. campuses. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. We saw Palestinian demonstrations, violent.
The students described some of what they had witnessed.
The university got a lot more tense after October 7th. There were protest rallies from the Palestinian side and emails by the president that originally weren't so positive towards us.
Shortly after the war starts and all these things start going around, like Israel's an apartheid state, Israel's genocidal, it turns into a rally of pro-Palestinian people chanting from the river to the sea. I have to go to class. I turn around, this girl grabs my Star of David necklace and goes, "You're a colonizer."
I go to the University of Washington in Seattle, which is a very contentious campus. Since October the 7th, not only has anti-Semitism been on the rise, it's been encouraged. And the media in Seattle, the media around UW papers, Seattle Times, all of it has just left such a sense of despair.
Danon emphasizes the importance of speaking up for truth.
Social media, it's very easy to spread hate and lies, and I think the majority of the students are allowing it to become the narrative. I think for you, you shouldn't be afraid from taking the stand and building partnership, with Christian groups, with other organizations.
Christians, looking at my social media, were some of the only people who were not Jewish to post about the October 7th massacre and who have continued to give me support.
Carlson is the only non-Jewish delegate and says his Christian faith connects him with the importance of standing with Israel.
My campus is unique. We don't have a lot of anti-Semitism, but at the same time, there's not a lot of support for Israel. My role is to establish a narrative for Israel, and that means sharing the stories that I learned from here back on my campus.
Hasbara Fellowships are active on almost 100 campuses and are partnering with IsraelAmbassadors.com, created after October 7th to bring students to Israel to educate them to advocate effectively.
They had to be leaders that were really active against anti-Semitism, so they had to be really effective already.
Students say that being here will help them on their mission when they return home.
Seeing firsthand is a lot different than online, all the pictures and videos. The police station in Sderot being completely destroyed, all the bullet holes, and hearing from survivors, hostage families, what they're going through made 100% clear that on campus I have to continue fighting.
Meeting with the President Herzog, and I learned the stories about what happened. It's going to stick with me forever, but it's what I'm going to be able to use and bring that back to campus.
I have actually joined a Jewish alliance group of legal professionals, of lawyers and notaries.
I also want to take everything that I'm learning from speaking with political dignitaries.
Danon tells CBN News that he wishes he could bring thousands of students to see the reality of what Israel is facing.
They gained tools and confidence to go back home and to fight anti-Semitism on campus.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, I'm sad to say we have to fight anti-Semitism right here in the United States of America. The FBI keeps track of religious hate crimes, and it's absolutely astounding that the majority of them are directed specifically at Jews and synagogues. That's the America we're living in today. And to see this on our college campuses, which are supposed to be bastions of what used to be called liberal education, and that word meant You have free and open discussion. You have a competition of ideas. You do it in a civil way. You respect one another. And in that competition of ideas, you're trying to have the best idea win. Well, that is no longer happening. And it just seems to be this rather bizarre, almost like a Chinese struggle session going on community campuses where you know, if you're not of the same ideology, then you don't belong on campus. And the ideology of that, a leftist ideology mixing with radical Islam, is how in the world did that ever happen? In the history of the radicalization of the Palestinian people, you have to look at East Germany, you have to look at the Stasi, you have to look at the Red Army, who trained them how to build bombs, who trained them how to do propaganda, who trained them to have this resistance state constantly plotting against Israel, trying to disrupt Israel. Well, it all came out of East Germany, and in that you see the tie, and it's just absolutely incredible that it has lined up on our college campuses. We need to pray for America. We need to pray for every single university. We need to pray for protection for Jewish people right here in America. We need to stand with them and say no longer. You can't have this. This is not the United States of America that our founders envisioned, where you have freedom of speech, you have freedom of assembly, you have all of these freedoms. Let's reestablish it, and unfortunately we have to reestablish it in our colleges.